The story of the Green Crusade. The year is 2003. Third edition 40K has been out for about 5 years, and fourth edition is a year away from release. Games Workshop announced that they will be running a massive summer campaign called the Eye of Terror, charting Abaddon the Despoiler's 13th Crusade, attempting to break into the Cadian Gate and out of the Eye of Terror. This would be a massive undertaking, far bigger than any previous summer campaign, and Games Workshop said that the result would have real implications on the 40K universe. A book was published, Codex Eye of Terror, detailing the background of the campaign, as well as several new army lists for use in the campaign. Players will log on to a campaign website and log their games from different sectors that would control who controlled which planet. At the time, in 3rd edition, orcs weren't in a very good place. They had received very little updates in 3rd edition, and none of their models have been updated since 1999. 3rd edition was also considered the worst edition for orcs. It was only about 48 pages long, extremely light on fluff, which led to many misconceptions about the orcs lore. Rule-wise, orcs were pretty underpowered and were considered incredibly weak and almost unusable. And just to kind of show you how far off they are, this is 2003. Last few models released in 1999, and it would be another 5 years before they got any update to their codex or models. So it was a pretty small community of people playing orcs back then. So back to the story. The Eye of Terror campaign is going on, and obviously because it's following Abaddon, it is mainly about chaos and its struggle against the Imperium of Man. All the Xenos factions kind of took a back seat. Tau were at least given some fluff for the reason that they would fight, but orcs and Tyranids really didn't receive any sort of justification, and they were just kind of said that they could act as either Imperium of Man or Chaos, respectively. So the other Xeno races were kind of treated like mercenaries to fight on either side, which I know there are some orc factions that are cool with being like paid mercenaries, but for many of them, that's not the case. So they were a bit annoyed that there wasn't even like maybe a paragraph or any sort of explanation of why they would even be involved in the fighting whatsoever. During the campaign, Games Workshop had a section of their forums dedicated to overall strategy for either side. Players could coordinate their victories so that way they could put pressure on certain star systems to try and take them over, or defend areas that they saw were being hit pretty heavily. And as you can imagine, an old timey form it was complete chaos. There wasn't really much tactical decisions being made, and for the most part, it was a stalemate with a few exceptions. But the orcs got organized. In a twist of irony, the faction that's the most chaotic, descending into the most anarchy in the lore, became the most organized faction. Finally, a member of the orc community said, "Right, we need to stop moaning about the lack of attention GW has given us and knuckle down. I propose that we carve a name for ourselves in the universe. We choose a sector and we destroy that sector. We overrun that sector. We claim it as our own. We don't act for chaos. We don't act for the Imperium. We claim the sector for orc kind." Players soon settled on Scarus sector, soon to be referred to as Scar Ooze sector. It was unimportant mostly for the sake of the story, so the orcs figured they'd have a really good chance of taking it and using it as a base of operations to spread out. As soon as the official message board went live, the orc community went on a recruiting spree. Messages after messages asking all orc players to converge on a third-party forum in order to coordinate their results. Orcs were by far the most coordinated race during the campaign. The message board would organize strategies, and the community would collectively choose single targets to attack. They absolutely destroyed the Scar Ooze sector. They would pick a specific planet and then get it all the way down to zero control, and then take it over and often renaming the planets afterwards. So the way the campaign kind of determined who was in charge of the planet was by control, and either the Imperium would represent the control, and if it got too low, it would switch over to chaos. So most planets were somewhere between 60 to 50, while Scar Ooze planets were below 1%. So they would hit a planet, get all the way down to 1%, and then switch to another planet. And due to the fact that most of the other factions were focusing on kind of key strategic planets, they really didn't have any defense against the Orc onslaught. And before long, this onslaught and this movement to attack various planets and take sectors was known as the Green Crusade. The end of the campaign saw most of the planets in the Scar Ooze system firmly in the hands of the Orcs. The community had even begun collectively renaming the planets. Most notably, they renamed the capital Mordrak Prime to something more orky called Mordaka Prime. Imbrium, Lethe 11, and Mordax Prime had comprehensively been subjugated, and the defenses on the planet Udrun, Ulat, and Niza Tremolo were collapsed. The relenting assault by the time of the end of the Eye of Terror campaign. The Eye of Terror campaign resulted in a major chaos victory. In chaos fluff terms, this should have meant a catastrophic defeat for the Imperium and carry major ramifications in the 40K universe. Unfortunately, it seems like GW got a bit scared by the massive shakeup. Rumors had it that the scene from some of the studio members, such as Andy Chambers, wanted the results to stand. They wanted to carry on with the shakeup that would lead to a Dark Imperium, kind of what we have now in the story. Unfortunately, the other side had won out, so the story did not progress as far as they would have liked. A few notable Eldar characters got killed. Then the rest of it kind of fizzled out. In the future, GW vastly reduced the scope of its campaigns due to the unexpected wins and how that could affect their story writing and the setting as a whole. But a few things did come from the Eye of Terror campaign, including the fact that Eye of Terror stayed, and there are bits of fluff in the planets that were taken over by the Green Crusade to this day. They often will include in parentheses what the planet is called by the orcs, the renamings that the community came up with during the Green Crusade. So when you see these little notes when you're reading through your novels, you can know that these are created by players back in 2003. I wanted to share this because even when you think your faction may be in a really terrible spot competitively, you can still have a lot of fun with it. I mean, these orc players were considered one of the weakest factions, and they were still able to make a massive impact on this large GW campaign. And if you run or work at a local game shop, maybe take inspiration from this and design your own maybe summer long campaigns for your players. Thank you for watching. If you want to see more orc related content, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.